Hi everyone, this is Javier, and today I will be presenting this session about building web applications with Visual Studio, ASP.NET 5 and MVC. We will also get to deploy this application to Azure, which is pretty cool. This is my blog in WordPress, my Twitter account, and my page in Facebook. This is the agenda that we will be following today. We will cover ASP.NET 5, just an introduction. We will provide an introduction as well about MVC6, and then we will get to deploy an application to Microsoft Azure. There are other advanced topics, but I will let them for another presentation. So let's start talking about ASP.NET. Well, for those of you who are new to web development in Microsoft technologies, I have to mention that ASP.NET is the most popular technology to create web applications, web services, mobile web applications. So that's the reason why I will be talking about ASP.NET. These are the tools that I will be using today. I will be using Visual Studio. That's the URL where you can download Visual Studio. You can also use Visual Studio Code. In any case, both tools are free. I will be using the .NET Core installer and the NuGet Manager for extension for Visual Studio. These two tools can be downloaded from this URL. If you want to develop without any code editor, but just by using something like Notepad, that's perfectly fine. The main difference is that you will need to download the .NET Core SDK. There are other tools included in Visual Studio, like clients for Bower, NPM, and some task runners like Grunt and Gulp, but these four tools are included into Visual Studio. So let's get started. At the moment there are two flavors of ASP.NET, ASP.NET version 4.6 and ASP.NET Core, that's version 1.0. The main difference is that ASP.NET 4.6 works only in Windows, in contrast to ASP.NET Core, which works in Windows, Linux, and Mac. At the moment, you will find in ASP.NET Core MVC, of course, Web API, but you won't find web forms nor or any other frameworks, but this is okay because this setup will cover 99.999% of your development needs. So in this presentation I will be focused in using ASP.NET Core Release Candidate 2. So without any other introduction, I would like to jump to the demonstration. In this demonstration I will be creating a web application using ASP.NET Core. So with that purpose in mind, please go to your code editor, in this case Visual Studio, then you click New Project, and then you will find a new option for ASP.NET Core. That option is under Visual C# in this case. Then you select that option and then you provide a meaningful name. I'm just going to provide something like sample web app. And then you click on create, and then there is another window here asking us for the template type. If you're going to use an empty template, web API, or web application. In our case we're going to use the web application template, so we click in OK, and then we will get to see our application. In the meantime, I would like to mention that NuGet, Bower, and NPM, all of these three tools are package managers. What does that mean? It means that these package managers are focused in copying, maintaining, refreshing, a specific package type. For NuGet, the package type is NuGet packages, I mean applications developed with the .NET framework, but for NPM is Node.js, and for Bower is client applications. That's JavaScript applications like jQuery. This is the application that was created. So we click on Run, and let's see the output of this application. So it's compiling. The build is a success, and then it's running. Yep, here it is. Localhost, and that's my port. I also want to mention that Visual Studio creates by default a website which uses the latest frameworks and development technologies. In this case, you can see this nice carousel, this nice UI, and this is a fully functional application, and then you have all these links and all of them are working. So one of the things that were used to create this application is Bootstrap. Bootstrap is a JavaScript framework which is used to create applications, web applications that look great in desktop browsers and in mobile browsers. So if we want to have a look at how this was created, you can go and double click this file. It's initially hidden, so you need to display it. So you can see the file. Well, you can see the dependency here. So it's in Bower Bootstrap 3.6, and you can see a file here, bower.json. So inside bower.json you will see it again, Bootstrap 3.3.6. Similarly, you can find the packages in the npm node. You can install and install Node.js packages, and there is also a file here. Oops, sorry, not that one. This one, package.json. We'll see all these npm dependencies, and the same for NuGet dependencies. So if you go to references, you will get to see all the different dependencies that are used by this project. You can also see them in project.json. Okay, what is the main benefit of having all of these in separate files? Well, the most important benefit is that you can run applications side by side, which means that you can have different applications in the same server using different versions of ASP.NET, of the framework ASP.NET, and that's possible because you don't need to install the different applications. So let's go back to our presentation. Okay, now an introduction about MVC6. So as commented previously, there are different frameworks within ASP.NET. One of the frameworks is called MVC, which is called MVC because it borrows the name from the Model View Controller architectural pattern, which means that an application is organized around this pattern. So let's go back and let's have the second demonstration. Let's go back to our code editor, and during this demonstration we are going to inspect an ASP.NET Core MVC application. So if we go back here, we will notice that there is we will notice that there are 3 folders. Let's see this one here. So there is a folder called model, another one called view, and another one called controller. So in models we have classes without any behavior, just data. That's a model, like application user. Okay, but this is just a class, as you can see. But there are other types of classes, and those are classes that or models that that aggregate or aggregate information from different parts of the application, and they don't exist in the real world. They are not abstractions of the real world, but they are just objects that exist in order to present or in order to display a single view. So these kind of classes or models are called view models. So there are folders for view models. There is also views. Then in the views you will find different views depending on the menus that we observed previously. So we have a menu home here, and then we have a view home. So we have a view folder with the same name, views home, and then this is everything about the main navigation, about contact index, about contact index. There is also another one called account, and there is another one, and this is everything about a user account, like how to register, how to create a password, how to get a password reminder. There is also another one called manage, and this is specific to phone numbers. There is another one which is common, and this is the general layout, the general template for the application. There is also another folder, that's the controllers folder, and then it's arranged in a similar manner than the views. So there is one for home, handling all the actions for the home page, for the contact, and for the about page. There is another one called account, and this is everything about user accounts. And there is another one called manage controller, which according to the functions is used to change a password, enable two-factor authentication, things like that. So that's the most important part of the MVC pattern, this separation of responsibilities. So well, I forgot to mention that the controller expects from input or expects for actions coming from the view, and then the models are used to move the data back and forth to the VUI and the controller. So the next part is this folder, www.root. So this folder is just to store static content like JavaScript files, lit files, images, CSS. So nothing fancy there. And then we have these in the root folder. We also have these two source code files in C#, program.cs and startup.cs. So let's have a look at this at the program.cs. So this program looks very similar to a console application, and is basically because a web application in the ASP.NET Core framework is a console application. And the idea of modeling this in that way is because we can potentially use different hosts. So in this case we're using the IIS Express, but it could be Kester, for example, for Mac. So this class only has a main function, and that's everything. That's the entry point of the application. Let's have a look at the startup.cs. Okay, and then in startup.cs we have a class called startup, and there is a function startup, and there are two important components in this file. The first one is that we will we can see that there is a file being used to store and retrieve the app settings. In this case, the file's name is app-settings.json. So if we double click in that file, we will get to see the connection strings and other values. Also, there is a section about secrets and about environment variables. So for development environments, we will be using the dev secret store. Okay, and for production, we are going to use environment variables. The idea of this is not storing user secrets like tokens, API keys in the web config. Also, it's important to notice that in this version of ASP.NET, the web config is not used to store anything related with name and value pairs. So that's everything. Now let's keep moving forward. So in the next section, so let's close this fella here, and then let's continue here. I want to mention that MVC6 is a modular framework, has a small footprint, and then there are another functions in the startup class like configure, that's to configure middleware, the request pipeline, and then we have another function to configure services, to configure frameworks and app services that use dependency injection. When I use the request pipeline, is this whole cycle that happens when the user requests a new page up to the point when the page is returned in a response. Good. So the next part is about deploying this simple application to Azure. So in relation to Azure, you can create a free account using Azure. That's in the URL. Then you will get $200 in credit, and that's enough to create 10 web applications or 10 mobile applications, or to try out the Azure IoT Hub. So that's good to start. That's how Microsoft gets you started in cloud computing in Azure, which is Microsoft Platform as a Service. Now inside Azure there are lots and lots of options. So you will find the following options: app service, service fabric, virtual machines, cloud services. So when you're creating app services, it's important to note that app services will cover 99.999% of your needs. That means that it's enough to store corporate websites, is enough to deploy multi-tier applications like web like applications to the front end, a back end in a database, things like that. There is also Service Fabric, and Service Fabric is for applications that need to interact or to orchestrate the infrastructure in a declarative way. So for those of you who are familiar with Kubernetes from Google, this is very similar. So it's like more granular, a bit of low level control. And there is also the lowest possible level, virtual machines, which is bare metal machines, and there is one level in between Service Fabric, app service, and virtual machines, which is called cloud services. So it's basically like a managed. It feels a bit like app service, but you can have access to the underlying infrastructure. So let's get started. There are several ways to use well, in our case, we're going to use app services. And in this presentation, we're going to deploy an application to Microsoft Azure App Services. So you can do it in two ways. You can go to the website Microsoft Azure, to this console, and then you can go to App Services, and then you click on New. But the second option is if you do the same but within Visual Studio. So let's go to Visual Studio, and then we have our sample application. That's our application here. So let's add some very quick changes just to test if this is our application. So if you go to views and then you go to layout, you can double click this, and we are going to provide a different name for this. So in our case, we are going to call this Introduction to ASP.NET Core. Okay, release candidate 1.0 release candidate. That's the name that we are going to provide. Then in our case, we are going to have a new link, and then this link name is going to be, we will call it let's give it a different name. So for our case, we're going to provide a very simple name like test. Okay, and then test, we will be adding this to the home controller. Okay, so that's a very simple change. So let's see how this works. We should be able to see another menu and a different title in the application name. Now, once we have completed this menu, we will proceed to another one which is a bit more complex. So here is, we have test, home, about, contact. Contact page is very simple. About is also very simple. So you know, the most elaborated pages are contact and home. Okay, so let's remove home. Actually, stop this. Okay, so let's use only test. And then so what are the steps to create a new page and a new action? So we'll have to add an empty controller, add a view, and then add a link to the new view. These are the steps in order to add our own functionality. So according to that, then we will have to add a new controller. This is our controller. We will provide a very simple name, which is called test controller, or not test controller, but sample controller. And inside sample controller, we will be adding a few links. But it seems that I have selected the wrong option, so we will have to cancel this scaffolding process in order to change the name. Oops, no, that's the correct name, but it should be here, not there. So we're going to move it. Okay, it's now in the right place. So we have sample controller, and then this is what you get out of the box. So the next step, according to these steps, is adding a new view. So in order to add a new view, we should add a new folder, and then the name should be sample, and then we should add another view. We can always add a new view starting from the ground. Okay, but in this case it's a lot easier if you just copy an existing one and you add your own content. So in this case, we are going to right click on index.cshtml and then we are going to copy it here, paste, and then we are going to remove some actions from there. We will need only also to reference our new controller, which is called test. So we'll call it new controller or new functionality. Okay, that's the new functionality. And then the sample controller, in our view we will be removing everything that we think is no longer necessary. So for example, the carousel, we don't need the carousel, so this div is not necessary. And then there are different sections: how to, overview, run, deploy. There are different sections, so we will actually remove all these sections as well, and we are going to say something like days of the week. Okay, and at the moment we are just going to replace the internal text, like Monday, Tuesday. This is just to verify that we are running our own new code. Wednesday, and then we have Thursday and Friday. Good, so we save this, we click on execute, and then we should be able to get our latest modifications. So it's compiling. It seems that it's compiling without issues. So at the moment this is a very simple application. So we will see just a static list of data. In this case the data is just the days of the week, but in the next example we will do something a bit more exciting. So if you have a closer look at the application, you will notice that there is a new function here, new functionality. Okay, if we click in new functionality, oops, it's failing. So let's see, there is something wrong in this. So the controller is now called sample. Okay, so we save it, and then we go back, we refresh this page, and then we click on new functionality, and then you have the days of the week. So that's a very simple demonstration. So thank you very much for following, and then during the next video we will get to customize this template and we will get to connect the application to data. But sorry, just before that we are going to deploy this to Azure. So in order to deploy this to Azure, you need to create an account, and after creating the account, then you go here, right click, publish, and then you select app service. You can create a new definition. Okay, so in this case we are going to provide some very random name. We are going to select West Europe, the free option. Okay, and then we are going to provide a different name and just a different plan. So it seems that that's everything. We will be using this one. Okay, so that's, and then we will change the name. and we will click on new. Test. Okay, test. So there are some issues with the name. We have to remove the underscore, and then that should be fine. And then we click on create, and at this moment Visual Studio is creating our web application and is deploying these items into Azure. So just to clarify what is happening at the moment. So for this particular example, we are using web deploy. Web deploy is one of the ways to copy files from your from your machine to the web service. In this case, the web service is app service. Well, we can now click on publish. Okay, so but what is happening at the moment is that Visual Studio is compiling the code locally, and then the output of this compilation is being copied over to the cloud. This is not ideal. This is just demonstration, and it might work for small dev teams or maybe startups, but if you are going to be very serious and if you are going to have a very organized development life cycle, then the idea is that you create your own continuous integration, continuous deployment pipeline. This is not hard to get, this is not hard to set up, because you know, it's even harder to try to keep a team organized without this kind of setup. Okay, so in this particular example, we are not using any of CI/CD, but it's, you know, just because it's an example. So at the moment it's been, let's look at the output. Okay, so it's been built. So let's see if it's alright. Okay, so it's been compiled again, and then eventually will be uploaded to the cloud, so we can see 0 errors, 0 warnings. And then the polish process has started, and then is copying the files to the cloud. It's compiling, the configuration is released. Okay, so everything looks good to me, and then is just running JavaScript tasks using Gulp. Remember that Gulp is a task runner, so at the moment I didn't add anything different. And then is using web deployed to copy the files, and that's the target application, sample web test.scm.azurewebsites.net. That's where we will get the application. So it's still copying the files. Okay, at the moment there is no issue, everything is working fine, and then we get to see application in Azure. HTTP sample web app test.azurewebsites.net. Then if we click in new functionality, that's our customization days of the week. So thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next video.